You ever think about quitting?
It's the combat of life hammering the snot out of you.
Well, stand by, dig in deep, and get ready to get fired up with us.
Welcome to the Team Never Quit podcast, the #1 podcast that inspires you to fight on. I'm your host, David Rutherford, here with Mr. Never Quit himself, Marcus Luttrell.
Our mission is to help you embrace the suck of life, to teach you the values of working your ass off, and to interview the most hard-charging people on planet Earth.
We know life is hard. It's time for you to suck it up, Buttercup, and let us teach you to persevere in every environment imaginable by sharing real-world lessons learned by those who never quit. That's right. It's time, Marcus, for us to help them defeat the negative insurgency in their lives.
You fire me up. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Let's roll.
Let's roll. Good morning, TNQ Podcast. What's up, brother?
Hey, good throw out. Nice homage to the
Dude,
man.
To the man, the myth.
Welcome back.
Dude, you know how good it is to see your hidden face? Do you know how wonderful, how inspiring it is to see that big dip lip in that Yeti cup sitting in front of me, brother? It's massive. That was the longest vacation of my entire life.
In like a hurricane.
Well, I mean, dude, it was huge. It was a huge one. But I'm back, and I'm filled with energy, and I'm super fired up, Marcus, Wizard, just to see you guys again, just to be here with you. You know why? Let me run down a list of reasons why I'm fired up to be back. One, the way our studio smells. It smells like victory. 2, the way your subtle, supple voice now sounds. Because before, I didn't get to hear a lot of it. Now, after all those incredible shows that you guys did, and by the way, I want to take a sidestep right now and put a personal thanks out to Morgan and Clint. Man, you guys did amazing. Thank you so much for the effort you made, for being on point, for making my brothers look good here, and just for taking the show to where it is now. Thank you, gentlemen, so much. I love you. Thank you, and God bless you, and please come back in the future, and let's get them live, Marcus. What do you think?
Yeah.
Live shows with them?
Yeah, they did a great job of stepping into the breach like that.
I mean, that ain't easy, dude, at all. I mean, and we're podcasters now, right? I mean, we're true podcasters, so them being novices, no, I'm kidding. We don't know what the hell we're doing. We just get up here and wing it, too. So, anyways, huge shout out to them.
That's what we said to them. Remember, we brought them in, we're trying to, let's just wing it.
You'll see.
Well, I mean, there were several shows that blew me away. You know, I love Liz's show.
Oh, yeah, she's all the time.
Huh?
Liz?
Oh, that show just, I mean, it was unbelievable. Liz, thank you so much. It was a pleasure actually meeting you this time when I was out here. But so just amazing job, guys. Everybody that participated, thank you for backfilling me while I was going through what I was going through. And I just appreciate, what you guys did. All right, where was I? 1, the smell. 2, his dip lip. 3, your supple voice.
Supple.
Is it supple? I don't know if it's supple as much. It's
subtle.
Subtle. That's what it is. Subtle. Sorry, I got that wrong.
Is it subtle?
Correlate that with something else.
Yeah. Weakness.
Check. Subtle. Subtle. Wisdom. Powerful wisdom, subtle voice. How's that?
It's like supple and yoga and yogurt.
Hey, man,
and
downward
words like
dog.
That, they seem to fit together.
Listen, there's a space and time for everything, right? Never mind. and 4 is I'm just stoked. I'm just pure energy stoked to be back here, be on the air. We got a kick-ass guest coming on. We got a bunch of other guests lined up. I'm fired up, dude. Fired up.
So are we.
Let's get to it.
All right. Well, let's talk about filmmaking. We've had some amazing. We had Peter Berg on. That's one of my favorite shows. We had Mark on. We had we had Lara Logan on as well. so making films, making journalism, being a journalist, very critical. But when you combine those two and you tell a narrative of a time in history that really was a pivotal event, right? It shaped the face of our perception on a world scale. The guy coming on today is an expert in that. And I'm a big documentary film nut. I mean, I lately, on my time off, I watched the Civil War by Ken Burns. I watched the War by Ken Burns. Man, I was entrenched in Ken Burns.
I remember when that was the Civil War one came out when I was in high school, I think.
Yeah.
He did one over the baseball.
That was the first one I ever saw.
Yeah.
Made me a baseball fan.
Civil War one. It's detailed too, man. He gets into this. He kind of connects the dots, and if he talks about one battle, he'll back it up and talk about. And he breaks it down as to why it happened and how it happened, the line by line. And if I'm one of those auditory visual learners. I sit there and see it going down.
Yeah. Well, I know you're a huge documentary guy too. I mean,
absolutely.
we just been talking about you getting into a bunch of documentaries lately.
Yeah, man. That Apple TV is the greatest invention ever, right?
There's a nice little plug for you, Apple. By the way, you want to be a sponsor for us? We're wide open for that.
If you can't find something, man, and you blast onto YouTube. There's another plug, right? The YouTube part of it.
Yeah.
And literally just walk back in time. That's one of the coolest things to put it into perspective, because when we were born, none of this was around. It was still in the future, and
Well, remember the Sunday night thing? Like on Sunday nights, you'd have certain documentaries about African animals or Jacques Cousteau and all that.
Yeah, during the morning on Sunday morning, you knew it was coming up, man. It was going to be that wild discovery or something.
Yeah,
right there.
totally.
That's how you picked all that up. And right after
Marty
Saturdays was
Stauffer's
Kung Fu
Wild
Theater.
America.
And,
Marty Stauffer.
And even now, like, it's become its own industry. I mean, you've got...
Sure. Well, the great part about it is really accessible. People have the video camera and document it. I mean, people's real time. It's like a real time documentary. I mean, you take it all the way back to how it used to be. First, you'd have to grab the camera crew and go back over there and then learn everything, make the documentary. Sometimes you had some real footage or whatnot. Now these guys, man, they literally throw it on their chest.
They're in the middle of Syria wearing GoPros on their chest.
Yeah.
Like, I just watched a recent one. It was about the white helmet guys of Syria. And it's this group of guys that came together. They all wear these white helmets. And as soon as the bombings happen, regardless of whatever, it's an ISIS bombing, it's a Russian jet bombing, whatever, they get the call, they're on these radios, and they literally run to these urban areas where these buildings have collapsed, and there's kids and families and buried in the rubble, and these guys race to this place and literally dig these people out with their bare hands, saving lives as bombs are still dropping all around them. And what I love about documentaries, when you watch a great documentary, and you guys please expand on this, when I watch one, I'm waiting for the content, the information to really connect, right? And to get me and to pull me in to whatever it's about, whether it's about a historical event, a person, or whatever, to where you feel that connection to them. And that's what a great documentary filmmaker can do.
Supposed to do, right?
Well, exactly. I mean...
Yeah, I mean, there's something about a documentary that I really appreciate when it has a level of authenticity to it. You're getting something real. They're telling you some information that is true about the world, and they're combining it in such a powerful medium as film or video. So the presentation of it can still have such an emotional impact. And I just find the combination of those two fascinating and powerful, and on such a wide range of subjects.
It's endless.
It's one of the things where if the documentary is done well enough to where we're always fascinated by our imaginations, and some of our most favorite movies are the ones that take us into a world that we can't exist in. Correct. So if you're watching a documentary and it seems out of reach, then you know that's powerful, because it's real time and it's about humans, about what we're going through. And if you're watching something, you're like, man, I can't even believe that's happening. It's a good one.
It is an awesome one. And so anytime a specific medium like documentary film or or film or radio or podcasts or blogs can disseminate quality, powerful information to the consumer, which is the end user, right? You sitting there listening to us right now, man, that's what's important. So again, I want to thank you guys for, welcoming me back. Thanks. But most importantly, I want to thank you, the listener, because the reason why the three of us do this is to deliver powerful content for you. Content that can help you in your life, a message, an idea, whether it's a documentary filmmaker, whether it's a swimmer, whether it's a veteran struggling, information that can help teach you the never quit mindset. And that's what the T&Q podcast is all about. If you're a first-time listener, welcome to the show. Thank you so much. We're blessed to have you. But if you're coming, if you want to know more about what we do, please visit our website at tnqpodcast.com. We're all over social media. You can follow us there. And then also, if you could, and you feel inspired after the show, go ahead and write in your greatest never quit story, or someone you know and care about. Have them write in and submit it to us. If it's awesome, we'll read this show. We'll read it on. We'll certainly post it on the site. We'll read it on air. And if it's awesome, Marcus, what do we do, bud?
Gonna bring you on.
You're gonna come on the show, and we're gonna have you as one of our never quit guests. Now, if you're coming back and this is your, I don't know, how many shows we on now, Wizard?
This will be 56.
Holy cow!
Really?
Are you kidding me?
56.
56, brother. Dude, that's epic, man. 56 shows. That's a blessing, man. We are truly blessed. And the only reason we're still
There's
here,
many people out there that liked us.
right? Oh, 2.2 million, brother.
I think about 2.3 million
2.3
Really?
million, yeah, downloads.
right now. Yeah.
Brother,
That's epic.
it's them. It's them. It's you. So thank you so much. We really appreciate it. For those return listeners, keep doing what you're doing. Keep spreading the word for us. We really appreciate it. If you also want to know more about Team Never Quit, visit the teamneverquit.com. We've got a great store, great merchandise. We've got a great list of speakers out there that you can hire to bring into your company. I'm privileged to be one of them. Amazing guys like Clint, like Chad Fleming. I mean, we just have some David Goggins. I miss him, dude.
I sent him a text the other day while I was out working in the yard. I was like, "Hey, man, are you being hard right now?" And he's, I've been hard since I woke up, boy.
I love it. And David exemplifies the spirit of what the show is all about, and trying to teach you, the listener, and help all those that you know and your family members how to face adversity, overcome obstacles, and learn the never quit mindset, man. All right, Wizard, can you? I think we got to bring him on now. Enough.
Let's talk about him. We need to introduce him. Give him a little career arc here. Get everybody prepped to hear. Californian. He's an American documentary filmmaker and producer. He grew up in California. Father was in the Navy. Education, went to George Washington University, BA in economics, and then he got his master's from the London School of Economics, which is rather prestigious.
It's the most prestigious in Europe.
Right. Starts out after that as a freelance journalist, war correspondent, working out of London. He did work for CNN, BBC, Reuters, and whatnot, but really where he started coming into his own, discovered himself, he turned to filmmaking in 1998. I'm just going to list off some of the titles here are going to tell you, the types of documentaries he's making. It gives you a good idea of who he was. The first one that really built his reputation was it was on the Rwandan genocide, the Ghosts of Rwanda.
Love that one.
It was for Frontline.
Unbelievable.
It took him 7 years. It took him 7
Wow.
years collecting the footage, the interviews, everything he needed to put together that first, and that really established him his reputation in the field. From there, Sergio. It was a story of the High Commissioner for Human Rights at the UN. He did one called God in America, America's History with Christianity, The Age of AIDS, Showdown with Iran, Homegrown, Counterterror Dilemma, Manhunt, which was
one of my favorites, dude.
Yeah.
I love that one.
kind of a documentary version of Zero Dark 30. You know, the story behind the hunt for Bin Laden, everything leading up to that.
He's got the real case officers that were on the Bin Laden desk in that thing. He went it. That's one of my favorites, dude.
I mean, so these are heavy topics and topics that required you to go to places that you're not going to take your family on vacation, right? To make these,
Yep.
right? And then most recently, and we're excited about, we're going to be watching it here
Yep. Today.
on iTunes, and I'm sure some other outlets you can go see it. Legion of Brothers.
This was the hook on me, dude. This is why I brought them to you guys. Because, I was, I was on the ground right after the horse riders from 5th Group, man, and they were unbelievable. Like, they were legends. I've never gotten a chance to meet those, but to be able to find this story and the importance of how it launched, right? How it launched what we were all involved in
Right.
for so long, man. That was like the first hoo-yah badassery that went down, and he tells their story.
Such a cool story.
Oh, and what I really love, in the trailer, which he also tells the story of the guys post getting out of SF and how they bond together, how they stay together. And we talk about that all the time, right? The necessity of how critical it is that we continue to share that camaraderie, right, Marcus?
Sure, man. Well, they were surviving in a world where it was just them. I mean, you've been there.
Oh.
You're stepping back in time. I mean, a lot of days that lead to weeks, that lead to months where it's just you guys out there by yourselves, man. And when that necessity to love each other and protect each other so you can survive, man, it never goes away.
Amen.
And then you come out of that. I would imagine once they got separated from the whole pack, that bond really kind of
Intensifies.
Sure, how could it not, right?
Well, you experience the same thing. I try and do the same thing. There's guys that I was with in the teams and platoons that I'm still super tight with, and that I make a focused.
See him running around here
All the time, dude.
all the time, man.
I love it.
Regardless of how often you see them.
Oh, well put.
It could be years, but you just pick on up like you'd
Right where you left off.
Right where you left
saw
off.
them yesterday.
That's the beauty of the brotherhood.
Let me read a description that they have for
Please.
Legion of Brothers real quick, because I think we're really encouraging people to go watch this,
Absolutely.
because I'm excited about seeing it. Here's the write-up for it. Legion of Brothers, immediately after the 9/11 attacks, less than 100 U.S. troops were sent on secret missions to overthrow the Taliban. What happens next is equal parts war origin story and cautionary tale, illuminating the impact of 15 years of constant combat. So,
Brother, bad to the bone. I mean, those dudes were on with that cat Dostum, who was Dostum, who was in the mood. He was a Mooj fighter against the Russians, and they were riding horseback, dude. And then the other cats, they're the dudes that brought Karzai on the back of a moped, literally through Spin Bulldog, right? Yeah. From up that one road that was a dirt road back then, right? Into Kandahar, as they were calling in airstrikes as the Taliban were fleeing Kandahar, man. They're literally like in their Hiluxes, dude. Wow. Karzai's on the back of the Karzai's on the back of their little moped.
And that Afghanistan was...
that's straight up Wild West.
This
It is Wild West.
The operator talking in me, but was awesome in the respects that, man, we could utilize every one of our training skill sets.
Absolutely.
And,
you had
and then some.
Right.
I mean, you talk about when the country boys shine, try walking out in the middle of nowhere and there's a horse sitting out in front of you instead of a Humvee. Come on, boys. I got this one. You know what I mean?
Oh, this is my wheelhouse.
Oh, dude.
And it's just, like I said, stepping back in time. We were doing we did a recon follow-on raid and stormed in here, and me and a couple other guys came into this house on the top, which we thought was a ground floor, but it was obviously in the mountains. You don't know, man. And one of the guys fell through, and there was a camel downstairs in the house. And I come running around, Medicuff, right? So I come running around the corner, man, and look in there, and there is a huge camel. Stared me in the face, dude.
Oh,
I caved in on the back end of him at first. I was like, what the? I thought it was hay.
Yeah.
What is it?
'Cause he wasn't
You on
tall.
nods at this point?
Huh?
You still on
Yeah,
nods
it's
at this
dark,
point?
man. And it was summertime. It was wintertime, summertime.
Right.
So he was inside the house, and he wasn't all tan. He wasn't bleached yet, so
Yeah.
he was black and tan, and it was dark, and there was hay in there. It was wet and nasty. You know how it is. There,
Yeah,
man.
like
You run in the
foul.
back of him, and thought it was some logs leaning against the thing right there. I'm like, man, every time I'd push it over and try to get over there, it'd come
Push you right back.
leaning back over. Finally, he all turns around, him with white lips, turn around and look at me. Yeah, it's funny to-
spit flying at you. Oh, that's awesome. All right, what do you say, gents? Should we bring Mr. Barker on and let's hear his story?
Let's do it.
Yeah,
All
oh, man.
right.
All of
Now,
them. I want
further
all of
ado, dun 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 dun. Now, Marcus, the thing is, man, we're both movie nuts, right? We talk about Peter Berg's film because he's a friend of yours and he's a wonderful director, but this time I think we're coming from something in more my speed, right? The documentary film.
All right.
the educational stuff for us.
Where it counts kind of stuff.
The where it counts kind of stuff. And I got to tell you, bringing Greg on today is just a powerful treat for me. One of his frontline special, Ghosts of Rwanda, back in the day was one of the most powerful things. I'm a huge Frontline fan. I love Will Lyman, right? The narrator, and he's an amazing dude, and the way he makes it, and it just the power of Greg's film in that it hooked me. And so fast forward, the fact that what he's doing in releasing Legion of Brothers, the story of Fifth Group and the original horse riders of northern Afghanistan, and to have him on, bro, we're going to have to increase our game today and be a lot more intelligent, I think. Can you do that?
Oh yeah, reach deep for the.
I know.
Books out.
Real
Wizard, you better get on this
Real
one.
deep.
Yeah,
The wizard. We got the wizard, so I know he'll throw out
Throw in that one.
some awesome codes. Well, let's just get into it. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, let's welcome Greg Barker to the show. Greg, thank you so much for coming on.
Awesome to be here.
Very cool. All right. So, Greg, what we want to do is we gotta loosen our brains up a little bit. We gotta massage the gray matter, so to speak. So, how we like to do that, instead of doing like Sudoku or some kind of challenging math problems or something, we have a little fun game called the Mad Minute. And as you're very familiar, you've done that wonderful documentary called Manhunt, The Search for Osama bin Laden, where you got to spend a lot of time with some analysts from the agency and some case officers and some really amazing people. They know what a Mad Minute is, but our Mad Minute is set up to be fun, right? There's no existential danger of our deaths or anybody else's deaths. So this is just a fun time to get warmed up. So we're going to shoot some rapid fire questions at you just to develop some rapport and get this process going before we get in the meat and potatoes. Are you ready, sir?
I had 4 beers last night, but I'm stoked on coffee, so I'm good. I'm ready.
That's all you need, a little caffeine and hate in the morning. That's it. All right.
Yeah.
All right. Marcus, fire away, brother.
All right, what was your first car?
My first car was a Ford station wagon that my neighbor crashed 3 days after I got it when I was 16 years old.
It had that huge swinging back door.
It was so hot. Yeah, it did. Yes, it did.
Did you have the wood paneling on the side too?
You know, it wasn't quite at that level. It was nearly there. Yeah.
Oh, I love it. I remember going on a family trips up to Michigan. We had one of those. It was yellow. And my parents would have that big back seat that faced the other way. No seat belts, no nothing. Playing with my G.I. Joes in the back. Great memories.
Oh, yeah,
Station wagons.
no baby seat, right? You
Oh,
slept
no.
in the floorboard or up in the window. Wizard,
Yeah, I loved it. And I had it, got on my 16th birthday, bought it from my dad, parked it out front, and Greg Jacobson, who lived up the road, came home one night, driving too fast and totaled it. That was it. But then I got an Audi right after that.
Oh, that's a good trade up.
$1,000. Yeah, trade up.
All right. Wizard, throw one out, bud.
Is Google more likely to save the world or destroy it?
Yeah, that's a good question, man. Well, it's like any technology. It can do both, right? So I think that is up to us, you and me, how we use the technology, not just of Google, but all of this stuff that's changing the way we think. So I tend to be an optimistic guy, but I think the jury's out on that one. We won't know for a while.
Fair. I mean, that's a very fair answer.
Yeah, me too. All on us.
Very fair. I like that. All right.
Amazing.
All right.
Thank you.
What movie, if you could only watch one movie for the rest of your life, what movie would that be?
It's just, I've got young kids, and we just watched it on Father's Day. They wanted to watch. They were arguing about which movie to watch at the end of the day, and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to pick the movie, and I picked Casablanca.
Oh, bless your heart!
Oh, wow,
that's awesome!
Right? Because it's just so. My 13-year-old boy is into the Second World War. It's all about right and wrong, tough choices of love. Ingrid Bergman is so beautiful when she walks in. Bogart's amazing. Yeah, I could watch it. I literally could watch it every day.
You know what's great? My old man was the same. That was his favorite movie too, and that's what he would want to watch every time it would come on. This is the beginning of a beautiful friendship, right? I mean, it's one of the greatest final scenes in movie history, man. Oh, I love it. Great question. Great answer. Great. Go for it, Marcus.
If you could travel back and make a documentary about either the Civil War, the Revolutionary War, or World War II, which one would it be? Let's change it up. If you could go back and make a documentary on any of the wars, which one would it be?
I'd go back to the first, when was the first time that human beings fought each other in an organized conflict? So when was that?
Wow.
Right?
Organized conflict.
The very first time, the origins of war, which would make it completely timeless.
Wow.
Thank you for saying that. Yeah. Absolutely, because people are like, "Oh, it's the boatmen when they came in and took down the Sumerians," or the.
I don't know if we have
way
records
before
for
that, right? Yeah.
There's
go and get that other village or that other tribe or something.
Right.
Had to happen at some point. Let's do this together, and this is how we're going to do it. And I want to document that.
Our bet is that it had to do with a woman. That's what our bet is, right?
I'm sure.
Over a woman, and that's clubs and rocks time right there, right?
Oh, I want your
roll
woman.
Up with your dinosaur. Like instead of a pit bull, you got a T-Rex. Come here. Yes, over here, boy.
Release the T-Rex. All right, Wizard. All right, go, bud.
Oh, man. If you could give truth serum to any one person, who would it be? Living or dead?
Person that comes to mind right now is Vladimir Putin.
Awesome.
He continues perennially to pop up in this show. I don't know.
Did you watch Oliver Stone's stuff with him, Greg, by any chance?
I have not watched it yet. I've watched just clips. I'm going to watch the whole thing.
It's really, really good.
It looks fascinating. I have no problem with spending 4 hours with Putin and giving him their airtime, even if he's lying or bullshitting. It's like we still need to. It's like you got to know who your adversary is and why they're your adversary.
Bin Laden.
So I'm fascinated by it.
Yeah, that was a great answer. All right. If you could pick any other dream career other than what you're doing right now, what would it be?
Yeah, so that's easy. So the one thing my dad was in the Navy, and I almost went into Navy ROTC, and I wanted to be a Navy pilot, and the only time I ever really regretted it not doing that. I decided at the last minute it wasn't for me, and I went a different path. But once I was filming with the captain of the Nimitz in the Gulf at night during flight operations on the bridge, and just watching how he orchestrated all that and kept it all going. And somebody in the engine room did something wrong and pissed him off, and how he handled that firmly, clearly, but kept the focus on the mission was really impressive. And I just thought I would love to do that job. And You know, but as you know, those guys get that job for like a year and a half, 2 years, and they're off to some desk job or something like that. So it's just such a. But I thought that moment in his position was like a dream job.
I would agree with you. Like in all of Navy leadership positions, the running of a carrier during war, in flight, you're exactly right. It's one of the most glorious things there is, man. That's really cool that you actually got to see it, though.
Still one of the most powerful men on the planet.
Yeah, it was awesome. He was like basically my age. It was just cool. It was just really cool to see him.
We were talking about that the other day about how the oldest running business is our military.
Yeah.
And the transition of power and the guys who make up the rank. And it's funny because you say that exactly right, man. You go through the military and you gain all this experience, and then as the more experience you get, the less physical. It's funny because in the beginning it's all physical, right? They take that physical and they wear your ass to the ground, dude. And throughout that time, you're gaining that knowledge, and then they're like, now it's time to do the mental part of it. But you're right, man. Them guys running those flight operations out there on that battle group, and you're worried about them running a company back here at the States, and this guy's running planes and helos, and you got a dude in the engine deck who's pissing on the spark plugs or something like that. You know, it's crazy, man. Right?
Pissed on the spark
Did you just say pissing on the spark plugs?
And this huge ship that they got this huge ship they're in charge of too. So it's the whole navigation and naval aspect of it, just that pure seamanship side of things, you know, which is not everyone can do either. Yeah, I thought of that, you know, that captain of that ship that was in that horrible accident off Japan. I mean, he was asleep in his bunk, and like his career most likely is just over, even though he wasn't even awake. But that's like, how did that? What led to that? How were they trained? Why was that situation ever? You know, it's just the responsibility that a Navy captain has at sea is really unique in our society. I think it's fascinating.
It's awesome. It's
it is
oldest
awesome.
Time, right? It's captain's law. As soon as you go in international waters, he runs the show. Most powerful man out there. And you're right. Yeah. He's responsible. 6,000 people on that carrier, right?
Yeah.
And if anything goes wrong, it is on his butt.
Yeah.
Well, not to mention nuclear weapons.
Yeah. Well,
good point. Good point. Just there's those things. There's those things.
Yeah. They use the most powerful man in the world is a nuclear sub-captain as soon as he goes underwater.
Yeah.
What are you going to do?
He's gone.
Yeah. Gone.
Yep.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. All right. Go ahead, Marcus. Fire one more at him.
Let me get one. I got to ask him this question.
Yeah, go.
I'm really curious. If you could live in the shoes of anyone who's been a part of one of your films,
great question.
We'll say a month, who would it be?
That's a great question.
Yeah, it is. You're on fire, wizard. On fire.
That's a great question. It would my first thought was probably one of the case officers from Manhunt, just because I found that job so fascinating. I'm not sure I would have the guts and the wherewithal to do it, but I would love to be tested. But then I also thought of this guy from the film you mentioned that goes to Rwanda. There was a guy who's became my personal hero, who was this head of the Red Cross in Rwanda during the genocide, and ended up kind of by playing all these different sides and walking a very sort of murky ethical line, saving probably 60,000 people.
Oh my God!
And then never talking about it again. And then he told the story to me for the first time. But I just thought he was just the most kind of humble but clear-headed, moral man I'd ever come across.
Wow, what an influence right there.
That's awesome.
We're gonna end it on that one because that was so amazing. Our show is directed at our listeners in terms of the people that are out there struggling to find that drive, that spark that lights the fire in their gut in order for them to develop a never quit mindset, whether it's they want to be a filmmaker and they just downloaded Adobe Premiere for the first time and they're like, they're going nuts. Or it's the people in a crisis emotionally. So what we do is we bring amazing people such as yourselves who really dedicated themselves to the highest level in their professions to come on and tell their greatest never quit story or stories. And so, Greg, if you could, would you please share that story with our listeners?
And it's great you're doing that, because, I mean, all of us have moments where we just want to do nothing more than quit.
Amen.
I don't know, you guys. but it's like, so perseverance, and that's what I try to teach my kids. It's just like the greatest quality. Also, the hardest one to teach. It ultimately has to come from within, right? So, I think actually I was thinking about which one. I'll just start with this with a story from my whole experience making this documentary about the Rwandan genocide, which was. It began because I was in a neighboring country, Uganda, doing a project on Idi Amin. It was a dictator, obviously, and a guy I knew there who was helping me on the film had his mom had been from Rwanda and had escaped before the killing began. So this was like in the mid-'90s, and I was just intrigued by his stories of what had happened there, and decided I wanted to go to Rwanda myself and just to see. Because at the time, I was kind of in my, I guess, mid to late 20s. I was traveling around a lot, and I was obsessed with kind of areas of conflict and what people did in moments of crises and how they were tested
Awesome.
and how they kind of came through them,
So
and
cool.
so I went there, and I wanted to find a way of telling the story of the Rwanda genocide in a way that almost evoked the killing fields kind of the thing.
Absolutely.
Let's see if there's a story of redemption in the middle of this. And I have to say, it was just for so long, it was kind of so depressing. There were just stories after stories of horrible ways that people were slaughtered, systematically. And I kind of got this deep insight into the darkness of the human soul, because I think my view was what happened there was, of course, particular to that country, but also universal. Humanity is capable of incredible evil. But what I kept sort of in my mind, I kept thinking there has to be some redemptive story here to tell. There has to be. Otherwise, I don't want to tell it. It's just too depressing. So I kept looking and looking, and I remember so clearly I met this, I heard about this American who worked for the United Nations who'd stuck around during the genocide. Everybody left, basically. So the government started killing one side of the population called the Tutsis, and very quickly, as part of some master plan to eliminate that ethnic group, and the world, the Americans, all the European countries, plus the United Nations, which had peacekeepers there, left, basically.
They tucked tail and took off.
Deuces, right?
They just left. Like, this is too crazy. We're out of here, And it's just Rwandans, just Africans killing each other, when in fact it was a government systematically killing its people. And I met I heard about this American dude who stayed with the United Nations. I went to see him, and he was still there. And I said, "Oh, I hear you're a hero." And he trying to provoke him. He's sitting there and drumming his fingers on his desk, and he's like, I'm not, but I know a guy who turns out he had a close friend of his who was an African peacekeeper from Senegal who ended up saving probably about 1,000 people. His story was sort of told in the movie Hotel Rwanda, although they gave credit to another guy.
Right.
And I realized that there was this insight into when the worst side of humanity is revealed, also the best can come out. And that's what I was focused on, which led me to this that Red Cross guy I referenced earlier, is that there is, in moments of crises, most people don't kind of, you just never know how you're gonna act, and most of us, I don't think, rise to our best selves. But some people do, and those are the real heroes. And I just kept looking and looking, and I eventually found them. And I tried to make this film that was depressing, horrific on one level, but also redemptive of the human experience and what is the best of us. And that's the process of that took about 7 years.
Oh, my gosh.
From the very time I was there, I finished the documentary. And it was quite a hard, sort of just on a personal level, not to overstate it, but it was a very hard journey to go on because of the number of stories I heard that were so horrific. But I just kept focusing on it and felt like in the end, this would have some impact. And and like, I'm thrilled that you've seen the film. I know it's still in high schools around the country, but what made it kind of worth it for me is we showed it in Washington to some government officials, and one guy who was very high up in the State Department at the time, this was during the Bush administration, came up to me and he's just, "This is so haunting, and it's just, I can't believe people in my positions made these mistakes, and the fact that you've got them on camera admitting it and talking about their shortcomings just makes me want to do a better job." And not that it solved all the problems, but I think it provoked some reflection on people on very high levels, who were confronting other crises. So, it was just like, it was a story of perseverance and going into the kind of leaping into the darkness and soul. I remember the very last interview I had to do for the film. All of these interviews were incredibly long, incredibly emotional, and I had to talk to a guy who, again, had seen this horrible stuff and kind of basically failed his own test of what he thought he should have done at the time. And the very first, I had to do this interview. We were about to finish the film, and beforehand, I just felt like, I was leaping off into the unknown. I didn't want to do it because I had been through enough of these interviews and they were so draining. And I know where I had to take this guy. And it was like, you can see the light at the end of the tunnel, but it's like fucking 20 miles long. And I just went down there, and then I got what I needed. He told his story, which he'd never told before. And so it was kind of redemptive for him. And I came out at the end, went to the bathroom and just totally bawled my eyes out. It's like, I would never want to do these, to listen to these stories again. But, I did it, and that interview was crucial to the film, and there it is. So it's just that process of like, not giving up, but just keep going, and like not being afraid of where the journey is going to take you, because the journey is worth going on.
It immediately invokes, like when you're telling this and you going from, because obviously you hear one story and then they tell you about their cousin or their friend or whatever. It evokes the whole Hearts of Darkness, Joseph Conrad book to me, that you're getting pulled down this river within the human condition that's just bleak and dark, but it's like you can't turn away. You're drawn to it because the story has to be told. It's just, you can't stop it. And now all of a sudden, it's like you've been touched for some reason whatsoever. You've been tapped to tell that story. Do you feel that? I mean, is there a sense at you, though, after you've heard 100 horrific stories, that you're saying, I got to stop this. This is going to destroy me. But what is the thing inside your house? What do you tell yourself that says, I got to get one more. I got to get one more?
How do you maintain perspective after, 7 years and all that?
Yeah, it's just, partly, yeah. I mean, you do. I did. I mean, in that film, I just felt driven. I felt like I had an insight. I had the access that was kind of unique, and I became like this kind of confessor to people who had been through this. So people even sought me out, and also it was just like, these people were so damaged by what they'd experienced, and most of them hadn't ever really talked about it. I remember one phone call I made to some guy who had been there and who had lost a friend, and I just called him up and I said, "Look, I want to talk to you about this guy." I mentioned the name, and the man the phone dropped, and I just heard sobbing. Wow. And just like, that's, you don't get that reaction, right? And so I just felt like this was a story that I was, kind of driven or called or whatever to tell. But I think, it also can be addictive. And so it's helpful in my business to have this kind of, it's all project-based, or mission-based. So then you've got a film and you're making the film. And so it all has to go into that. And I try to, over time, I get the experience to know what I need for the film. I try not to, do interviews, particularly emotional interviews with people who I know I might not really need, because it's hard for them. And if it's not necessary, I don't want to put them through that if I don't have to. And so, it in that case, I finished that film. I haven't been back to Rwanda. I mean, one day I want to go and I want to take my kids, but I haven't been back. I just kind of closed that chapter, put it aside. I feel like I've got a book about it in me at some point, but I'm not ready to do that yet. And I just moved on to other stuff. So, it's kind of, I know a lot of combat journalists who get, sucked into the adrenaline of it. I don't need to tell you guys this, and who can't let it go.
Yeah, we had Laura Logan. We interviewed Laura Logan on the show, and she described these extensive embeds with the SEAL teams in Afghanistan, ODA, and Iraq. That it became addictive to her.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when I was a freelancer in London working at CNN, in the control room and stuff there, right? But I knew a lot of guys coming. This was like during Bosnia and Sarajevo, and a lot of journalists who were just so doing great work in the field. They'd come back and they'd have to report on British Rail, privatization and shit like that. And they're like,
yeah, right now, man.
But they were just living for the next mission, and I could see their lives, like personal lives, being destroyed, and drinking a lot, and I had wanted to do that. I wanted to be a foreign correspondent for the big networks and just a war correspondent. And I just thought, this is not. I don't want to live that life. So I kind of compartmentalized that need for that adrenaline rush and put it in certain films, But so and I learned that through the Rwanda process of like going so deep and then coming out and trying to put it in perspective with the rest of my life.
One of the questions that I want, it seems like that was a catalyst for you to get into kind of the twofold of the story, right? You have the historical importance of it, and as it relates to, how we perceive the human condition across civilizations. But then there's always the individual story too, and it seems like once you did that, it really catapults you towards these very significant issues and in pieces of time. And I'd like to pivot towards Manhunt if you could. I think we all have a lot of friends that were involved not only in the actual Abbottabad raid, but also the 20-year process of the bin Laden deaths starting in mid-90s, late 90s, all the way through the incredible journey through to that, 2010 and Coast bombing and all that. So can you help us understand why you make that, why you look for that kind of duality in your filmmaking?
Well, I look for that because that's part of the human condition. I mean, that is the essence of it. With Manhunt, so the night of the raid, I was home in California, which is where I live now, and I was watching the celebrations on TV outside the White House, and of course, I was glad they got him, but I didn't feel like I thought the kind of the cheering and was just misplaced, right? Because I just knew from my experience, I knew enough of people in that world to know that this was a dark chapter in our history. Amen. From 9/11 to Abbottabad, which I think we'll look back on as a 10-year chunk of time, and I was like, there's a story here that is not this cheering. There's a story of pain, suffering, resolve, heroism, but it's not like, we got him. It's a lot. And that was just like, I got to make this story, and I got to do it from the inside out, and so I think the film begins with like Marty Martin, one of the case officers, and Nada Bakos, one of the targeters, and they're just like sitting at home, like Cindy Storr, an analyst, sitting at home, like, and they're not cheering, they're just like reflecting, and you can feel the weight of that 10 years on them, and for some of them dating back because they were like tracking bin Laden before 9/11, obviously. But I just felt like this had to be an answer to that. To those cheering crowds. Not to say we shouldn't celebrate, of course, and acknowledge it, but to know that this is not like, it's like when people like we watch war movies and just like, yeah, we got him, yeah, it's great. It's like there's just so much more to it than that, and it's this darkness to the human condition that is we have to not just you have to like just not stay there, not look at the dark side. You got to acknowledge it. It's like this is difficult, and this is the full range of human emotions at play here and human experience. And that's why I felt compelled to make that. And I'm just fascinated. So I set out to make a spy movie that was a documentary. Just like, let's not do some boring. Let's make a fucking spy movie and make it real with real spies. And that's what I did.
Well, what I love about it was, you were able to portray that grief. And all the people that I know that work for that group that were involved in it, and all the guys that we know, I mean, right. Intimately close friends of ours that were part of a lot of those, the prequel to the thousands of raids that led up to it. It is about each one of their stories and that weird pull back in where you keep going back and we can't let it go and we can't let it go. And it's remarkable the way you're able to show that drive, right? And it's complete dysfunction, right? Any normal human being out there looks at one of us or why you do it or why you keep going back and you keep going back in the worst places in the world and after the worst human beings, the worst evil. But it's like you can't quit. It's like a drug, right, Marcus?
Sure. I mean, it gets inside of you just from like building that base. You start it up, and the more you go down that rabbit's hole, the more you want to go. And it's kind of interesting because looking at everything that you've done, and from my own experience with Pete and making something that was true to life and bringing it to the screen, and then you do that, but you take it all the way. And I saw the transition that Pete made, just having to deal with our situation, then to live with us and to train with us and to actually become one. You develop that mental focus and kind of that overall attitude that we have. And that's kind of what carries you into that. And just like us, when we get back, I mean, it was horrible over there. About 2 weeks, we're chomping at the bit to get back over there and get back around the boys. Cause that's what kind of makes you up. And I was listening to you talk about the day that came out that we got bin Laden and everyone was cheering. And I remember that too. And I was thinking about what I did, and it seems like the generation that was born kind of after the hit. I mean, one of the ways we celebrate victory is we cheer. Just like it was so horrible when 9/11 went down, everyone cried, because when you lose, we acted the same way. And now we had the victory, and now it helps you remember that moment in time, right? When there's that big celebration, and the rest of us were like, good.
Yeah, thank God.
I just remember going, good. Yeah. We sure did. And not to go back, man, that thing you did on Rwanda, that's just, you're unique in the way you're approaching things. You have to actually get out there and live in that. When you're dealing with a country in a civil war, so to speak, and you're over there, look, they don't care about us when we're fighting them, but when you got a civil war going on, they really don't care about outsiders, man. So the danger level is just off the roof, man. And I mean, you had it was the Tutsis, right? I don't want to always mess that up, but in the Hutus killing each other. And then you had Hutus killing moderate Hutus. I mean, you're not even knowing what's going on. And people, what you do is you shed a light on some of the atrocities going on in humanity. And I can only imagine the taxing, the drain on having to see that all the time. On top of which you have to put it into the stuff you got to cut out.
That's what I'm fascinated with.
You know what I'm talking about? You got to oh man, I need to put, this is kind of important. And I don't have to put it in for this to make sense, man. But it's a lot of times it's those one little details that makes that congressman go, hey man, what the hell's going on over there?
What can I do to improve? Yeah. Can you describe your editing process, Greg? I mean, because you're delivering massive stories about massive things. How do you pick and choose what stays and what goes?
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, there's a phrase in editing called "you got to kill your babies," right?
Yeah,
so you have to
right.
Kill your darlings.
So
I heard. I was like, what?
There's all these scenes that you love that, like, oh, this is great, and of course you're always, remembering, oh, when we were there, this was such an amazing scene to film. Of course, the audience doesn't care or know what the context. It's just what's on the screen. So it's actually pretty ruthless. You have to like be very focused on what the film is about, who the main characters are, what the narrative arc is, and I try to keep films, as compact as possible. Legion of Brothers is like basically 80 minutes, where it could have been much longer, but just to keep things watchable and engaging. And so you just gotta cut stuff out, and you gotta be ruthless about it. It's, and I love editing. I mean, I don't do it myself. I work with very talented editors, but I love the process. And but it's about keeping focus. Because most films, particularly true of documentaries, are too long. Because people get too attached, and they need this. People need to understand this bit. Well, they don't actually. They need to watch a movie that is really compelling and engaging. If they want to know more, they'll go read the books. They'll go on the internet and find out more. But let's just tell a good story. But it's a ruthless process, actually. And then I gotta call up people and say, yeah, you're not in the movie because of this, and yeah, it's a hard part. But it's part of the process.
So Greg, why the documentary format as opposed to a fictional narrative? It sounds like you're very invested in the emotional impact. There's a quote here that you have. You said, stories that work as stories that connect our audiences to issues that they otherwise wouldn't connect with. Stories that connect an American audience, a Western audience, with the rest of the world in a way that is visceral and entertaining and feels relevant. I love it. It sounds like you're very invested in that emotional impact, and based on what you just said there, make sure that's conveyed. Why the documentary format as opposed to, a fictional narrative or your Hollywood film, so to say?
Yeah, I mean, well, I guess it's a twofold answer. Partly it's just the way things work out, right? I mean, that just happened. I grew up on the West Coast and went to London and for grad school, ended up doing this kind of stuff. But I just love it. I just love the real world experience. And, I mean, you just can't make some of this stuff up, right? So there's nothing like going out in the field, finding people, real people, getting close to them, having them tell you their story, trusting me with their story. It's kind of, and then finding a way of making that into something that is watchable. I just love it. I mean, I do have I would love to make a fiction film at some point but probably something drawn from real world experience. There are some stories that are true stories that are best told as narrative fiction, because Lone Survivor, for instance, it's not like you can't making that as a documentary. What footage is there? But that's the story that has to be told, and so that's a natural narrative, But and it was interesting with Manhunt coming out right around the time as 30 came out, right? So kind of like seeing the two different ways of approaching the story. It was interesting to be a part of that. But I just love the process of docs,
I think when you turn the television on, you sit down, man, you're watching a documentary. It kind of makes you pay attention a little harder, too. I mean, you just kind of... With that being said, though, some of the movies that are made, I guess that is the rub, right? You got the documentary, hey, this is the no kidding what's going on. Then you got a film out there that has all the flashing and everything like that. And that kind of it depends on the audience, too, I would imagine, right?
Absolutely, your demographic.
I remember... when you were talking about the editing, that is, man, to kill your favorite baby. It was good to have an outside eyes, outside perspective, because we get so locked in, and because it's a true story. For instance, the rescue for the helicopter to come and get me out of there, and all that stuff, man. That in real life that happened at night, and I mean it was a nightmare to get me out of there. And the part about it that was hardest to explain was all those guys are alive, right?
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about? Yeah. And the movie was filmed over all the guys that didn't make it. And, what those guys did, I was in hell. I mean, hell, right? And y'all came and got me. That's just the most unbelievable thing I'll ever live with. Yeah. And to give credit to them for coming to get me, I mean, there's documentaries out there, and I thank them all the time. Like, man, dude, I'm sorry. We just had to do it this way, because it's funny when you're talking about the time a movie has. Pete would say it takes... A movie needs to be as long as it takes a man to sit there without having to go to the bathroom. And you adjust, right, Greg? Yeah, I'm talking. Yeah. I had so much fun in Hollywood learning all this stuff. I love watching them, but watching them being made is completely different altogether, man. So I mean,
You know
off
what my
to
favorite
Pete on
scene in that movie is your cameo, bud.
Oh, yeah.
Are you in it?
Oh yeah, he's
No,
got a
that-
great
They just,
cameo.
it wasn't scripted or anything. They were just all sitting around this pit. It was early in the morning. You know how it works, man. A lot of hurry up and wait, just kind of like the military. So we were just sitting there and they just kind of pan the cameras around on it. And a scene unfolded. And then Pete was like, wait a minute, do that again. Let's film that.
It's like
just us
it was like a Stan Lee superhero
Yeah,
cameo.
I mean, it was
All right, Greg, I want to pivot and get into the crux of your new film, Legion of Brothers, and I got to tell you, man, I hit the ground. I was in Bagram in late May of 2002, and man, their story was still, epic, and it was still, did you hear about the fifth group guys? And can you tell us what provoked you wanting to tell that story? Because Manhunt's kind of the ending, the lead up to the ending of that 10 years. Now you're back to the beginning, right? Kind of the John Wayne-esque component of it. What made you want to tell this story?
Well, partly because it was the beginning. It's like we've all been living in this post 9/11 era now, right? It seems to be going on for a long time. And I was thinking, I just felt, for a while I've been thinking about, is there a war story I could tell? Is there a film? And so I was thinking, like, well, maybe we should go back to the very beginning, the origin story. And as it happened, in 2002, like March, April 2002, I got to meet a lot of these guys from Fifth Group. As I was working for Frontline, and they asked me to do something on, what had just happened in Afghanistan, and Fifth Group was making some of these guys available, and to meet. So I went to Fort Campbell and met probably about 40 of them, and heard their stories and put some of it in this Frontline documentary. But it just stuck with me, particularly the stories of the Horse Soldier Team 595 and the team in the South 574. And so I met, back then I met Mark Nooch and his team and Jason Amarine and his survivors of his team. And I just couldn't get out of my head for years, and I kind of kept in touch with some of them. And then I just felt like, a few years ago, I was like, this is the time to tell this story, and the stars kind of aligned, and it was my producing partners, Peter Bergen, knew actor McCraven, and went to see him, and it was just like McCraven wanted to, look at maybe telling some stories about special forces other than SEALs. Sorry.
No, it needs to happen. God bless you for doing that. Those boys.
McCraven's the man.
I got to tell you,
those guys are awesome.
So when we premiered the film at Sundance in January, we had like 3 of the guys from the film there, 3 or 4, and Mark and Jason and Scott Neal, and so they got a standing ovation. It was awesome. It just meant so much to these guys to see this, this Hollywood crowd acknowledge them, and it was literally a 3 or 4 minute standing ovation. The first question from the front row, guy raised his hands like, yes, first question. So are you guys like SEAL Team 7?
Oh no! Oh no! Oh, that's horrible. That's
They're like,
that's why we're hated right there. That is why we're hated.
Absolutely, man.
So,
God dang, dude.
what, now, Greg, I've only seen the trailer, and I got to tell you, that's what hooked me, and that's why I brought it to the team, and that I really wanted to say, hey, let's try and get in touch with Greg. Because I've always wanted to bring one of those guys on, and we will do that eventually. But what I thought would be the greatest initiator for that is really to bring the guy who saw the bigger picture from these individuals and what it meant long term for them. So without spoiling the movie for people, can you describe a little bit what you experienced by telling these soldiers' story, so to speak, and the story of their lives afterwards too? Yeah,
I mean, so the film, so it's basically it's the story of what happened these first teams that went in right after 9/11 into Afghanistan, and helped overthrow the Taliban and disperse Al Qaeda. This amazing mission within about 10 weeks or so. But half of it's also with them living their lives today. And when in talking with them about how to make the film, one of the direct action guy from one of the direct action teams, Scott Neal, was saying he'd been very active with the Green Beret Foundation, and he felt like none of them had a good outlet to tell their own stories, and that people had gone back after multiple deployments and felt kind of lost and had trouble getting on with it, making their way in the world. And
Absolutely.
He's like, let's find a way of coming together and telling our stories again, because it's a way of healing and then moving on. And so a lot of the film is that. I mean, we've filmed with them going off on, camping trips or family barbecues. Spent a lot of time with some of the families in the film to because all of them, I don't need to tell you guys this, but they're all like, what we did is this, but our families paid a huge price, and obviously some families have stayed together, some didn't, all that kind of stuff, the range of human experience. But I really wanted to capture the full price of this long war and these long multiple deployments, as told by the people who were like, if you think of it, like the first foot soldiers of the war on terror.
Right.
So, and I know there were other elements there and agency guys there, but these are the guys who were able to tell the story from the first guys in, and what impact it's had on them and their families, and by extension then on us as a country, And not to say we shouldn't still be out there, but it's at least acknowledge that this is now the longest war in our country's history, and it's fought by a narrow sliver of our population who will want to do it, but it doesn't come, without a price, and we have to acknowledge that, and that's not what the story is. A story of heroism, perseverance, cost of war, the nature of war, what happens when we go into battle institutionally. There's a whole element about these, in a way, the initial missions are quite pure. They don't have much communications with their commanders. They go off to link up with, Northern Alliance and Hamid Karzai in the south. And these guys, these small ODAs, are pretty independent. And they've got agency guys with them, but they're kind of out there and calling the shots as they see it on the ground. And then at some point, higher command comes in, and then things get more complicated. And it was kind of emblematic with how these wars are being fought. And
Absolutely.
And you talk to guys now, and just like the amount of independence those guys had back then is kind of extraordinary. And it's also that independence that I think allowed them to do some pretty extraordinary things. So it's kind of like I tried to make a war film that worked on a lot of different levels. It's a great sort of emotional story, but also I think makes us reflect on how we fight these wars and the cost of them, both on the men and women who do the fighting and on the families, and ultimately on us.
That first two squads that went in, that's heavy, man. That's raw adventure. I mean, guys,
that's the real deal.
Everybody who goes into Afghanistan been whipped. I mean, the Russians had just been whipped right before that, right? And those guys going in, and it's cool, man, when you're going in and making the map and the route, right? And what you were saying is that the autonomy they had to move.
Well, I'm going to tell you, I was using 30-year-old Russian maps and driving around and 25 million landmines. I didn't think it was that cool.
Right.
I was.
But
I'm kidding.
I mean, a lot of people with the Green Berets, man, they're designed to do that. I mean, the 18 Deltas, the Medic series, everything, they're designed to fit for internal defense, right? They're go in, set up shop, and that's how you win a war, man. You get the people on board, and then they take you and show you where the bad guy is.
Hearts and minds.
And you're right. As soon as that flagpole moves in, and there's some brass in, it's shave and a cut and check the watch bill, and the dynamic changes, right? And then ultimately, once the flagpole gets in, and they shift everything up to the higher command. The guy sitting behind the desk in the suit is calling the shots. That's when stuff gets kind of weird. Especially when you're
absolutely.
nowhere, man.
I remember when
you want us to do what?
Yeah.
That's not even in this country. How does that even make sense, man? What?
That is so true. That arc of how that takes place.
Oh my
It
God!
is. I watched
what?
it in Kandahar and Bagram happen at that. Greg, I want to ask you something on a personal note. Obviously, when you look at your body of work, you and I've watched a lot of interviews you've done, and you are picking heavy subjects, and there's something that keeps you coming back. There's something that, drives you. Is it when you hear the individual story, or is it the greater story itself, and then that leads into the individual story? What is it for you that just has you keep going back? And then what is going to be the next one for you? How do you get any deeper within the human condition than you already have?
Yeah, good question. I grew up in, my dad was in the Navy, as I said, but I grew up in the kind of happy, comfortable California suburbs, and I just felt like there had to be a bigger world out there. And partly it was from like the postcards my dad would send me when he would go all around. And it's like, geez, that's like, I want to go out there. And so, I having moved around, I am back in California with family. It's a great place to live and raise a family, but there's just this world out there. And I think it's so easy as Americans to kind of like live within our bubble, and because of course, our country is incredibly divided right now, but let's remember we have an incredibly privileged existence in this country compared to the rest of the world and compared to human history. And we are so lucky. And which is why, all this arguing is just I find it so depressing. It's like, come on, we've got to be able to get beyond all this. But having said that, I just feel like we have to, we kind of owe it to ourselves and to the world to kind of like just be aware of what's going on out there. So I just feel drawn to finding stories about the world that relate to us, help us understand how things work, our place in the world, because we are, whether we like it or not, an international country. You look at where our forces are deployed. We are tied closely to the rest of the world, and it's not going to change. Whatever our foreign policy is, it's not going to change. And we have to, kind of open our eyes, come out of our bubble, and be aware. And I try to, inch that along by looking for good stories. And I also just find it interesting on a personal level. I love being exposed to new ideas and new people and being challenged and having my own, my own eyes open. I love it. I don't want to. I'd go crazy if I was just stuck in one, place and not seeing how other people live. Yeah, it's just kind of like I wouldn't say it's like a way of life. It's just kind of evolved over the years, and I love on a personal level, I'm independent and don't really have a boss, and people pay for the film. But I kind of like have my own. I can make my own schedule, and I love all that too. So it kind of works for me on a personal level. But I just feel drawn to do this.
Well, all right, that's a wonderful answer, and I appreciate your candidness with us. One more thing we always like to do at the end, and we got two little more parts for you, is for the person that's sitting at, in their car listening to this or wherever they might be, and they are listening to you and your passion behind storytelling, your passion behind America's relevance in the world, and the passion to leave behind something significant that it makes people better, so to speak, by educating them. What do you have to tell them? What are 2 or 3 things that you can share with our listeners that will help spark the fire in their gut, that will help them, face the adversity when they get confronted with somebody saying, no, you can't do this, you can't make that film, you're not good enough here? What are the things that you tap into in yourself that cultivate the perseverance in you that you can share with our listeners?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. I think for me, the greatest insight I've had in my sort of professional world is that despite all of the what we see as dangers and conflict in the world, I think fundamentally people are good.
Amen.
You know, and even though I've spent a lot of my career looking at people who are not, but I think
I'd say
Yeah, that's a significant statement coming from
from
you.
him. It is
That's a
right.
significant statement.
what's that?
That's a significant statement coming from someone with the breadth of experience internationally that you have.
Yeah, well, I do. I really think. I think that there's. So I try to when I hit obstacles, I try to look at it from somebody else's point of view. Why is this obstacle there? How can I understand this? You know, if there's a person or an institution blocking my way, how do I get beyond that? What are the, you know, if I was in that person's shoes, would I see my project or me as an obstacle? And if so, what would be the pressure points that might work for me to change my mind, to let this guy do his film or whatever? So I try to use empathy to kind of like to kind of break through things, because I think if we just have to understand the other person's point of view, whether we agree with it or not, you know, but you have to understand it. And I think, you know, even if you talk to like, you know, CIA targeters, you know, chasing, you know, Al Qaeda or ISIS bad guys, you know, they do develop a form of empathy of their target that they're facing, because that is how it's like, that's how you get into the mind and try to see what the vulnerabilities are. And I think, you know, most people are not like that, but so you have, you know, if we can cultivate the ability to kind of see the other and understand the other, and kind of meet that, you know, the person who might be our adversary on some kind of common ground, that's the way I always find that progress happens in the shades of gray. You know, that, you know, sometimes there's good and sometimes pure good, sometimes there's pure evil, but most of the time it's all very murky, and we have to, like, you know, people are capable of both good and evil, often sort of almost at the same time. And so you have to like work in that kind of like that messy middle ground. But I think real progress happens there, and that comes through being empathetic. So I find that, you know, for me, what keeps me going is just the faith in my fellow human being, even if I find them really annoying and repulsive. Not to say I'm like perfect all the time. I get really annoyed with people, but, you know, it doesn't always work. But, you know, I find that when I break through, it's like the times I'm really trying to listen and try to understand another point of view, and then keep my own mission front and center, but know that, you know, you can't just you have to be flexible in your thinking and in your understanding of others to actually get what you want, you know. And I apply that then to, you know, you apply that also to your personal relationships as well as, you know, missions out in the field. It just kind of, I find I'm a calmer person when I kind of, as a result of having that realization. And it came through these kind of experience I've had making these films.
Fascinating. I love that. I just want to extend that question a little further and maybe get one more point of advice based on, you know, you really strike me as someone who has gone out, been unafraid to find your passion, to pursue it, get yourself in a position where you're really making an impact. I mean, you seem that this is your calling. What could you say to perhaps younger people out there that are listening about not being afraid to pursue that, you know, their calling, going discovering that for themselves?
Yeah, I mean, well, I would say that it's, you know, I really believe each one of us has a calling and a passion, but it can take a while to find it. You know, I mean, I didn't really discover the path until I was like 26 or something like that, and it's kind of like a lot of people flailing around and not sure what I wanted to do and all that. And, you know, I just kept looking and trying to be open, and eventually was lucky enough to get a break and find something. But I think, you know, I think it's easy nowadays to kind of think that, you know, things should happen quickly, you know, and
absolutely.
It doesn't, you know, and like, you know, I mean, I work with some a lot of young people, great young people. Some people, from this current generation, I think want things a little bit too fast, and sometimes it can happen fast, which is great. But a lot of times it doesn't. It comes through hard work, and it's just being patient, but also and being open, and also I think taking the risk to take yourself out of your comfort bubble, and that's like, I grew up in, bubble of Southern California, and it really helped me to get out of that. And I didn't really know why I wanted to get out of it at the time, but I just knew I got to get for the world in this. And I'm so glad I did, because it's like, it's really good to kind of go out and be challenged and feel totally out of your depth and go to some other country or whatever, and just like find yourself through adversity, and that's what I would say. Risks. I get people who ask me like, I want to direct films, I want to be like you. I was like, well, what have you need? Maybe you need a bit more life experience to know what your voice is, and then just go out and just leave LA, do something, whatever it is. Just go take risks and do something with your life, and you'll find your voice. It'll come, but be patient and be open, and see where things lead. That's what the risk taking in personal life is quite important.
Amen.
Yeah.
That's amazing, Greg. Thank you so much for coming on with us. It's been an incredible treat. Where can people find Legion of Brothers out there right now?
Yeah, well, I think like right around now, it's becoming available on iTunes and other sort of direct sort of platforms. So check that out. And it's going to be on CNN. CNN Films actually funded the film. It'll be on CNN in sort of mid to late September, and then it'll be on Hulu later in the year. But if you want to see it now, check your video on demand, outlets. It should be on iTunes, and then plus I think there's DVDs and like coming out now in Walmarts and Best Buys, and it's all, and on Amazon you can find it. So it's out there now. Just go find it.
Oh,
I think we found what we're doing tonight.
Yeah, we found what we're doing tonight. So, Greg, thank you so much for coming on and spending this time with us. But more importantly, thank you for telling our brothers' stories, telling the stories of real hardship, and basically having the courage to go tell kind of the most dramatic stories within the human condition in the last 30 years. It is very impactful and meaningful for, I believe, our society and society around the world. So please keep it up, sir, and thank you, and God bless you in your efforts.
Yeah, thank you for that dedication. It's important work.
And thank you guys for doing this. It's such an important show for people, because you guys are using your own experience and now translating it to others who might, need some guidance or we all need, some help along the way. You guys having been through what you've been through, to be doing this now, it's great. And it's a privilege to be a part of it. And congratulations on the success of your show. It's really exciting for you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Before you go, I just want just from me to you and what you do, it is really important. I mean, and because you're good at it. And here's the deal, and this is kind of my opinion on this, but through generations, I mean, all the way back as long as we've been fighting, warriors pass their stories down, usually to other warriors, right? And it's kind of like when you're sitting around the fire, and that's the motivation that comes up, because you're hearing about these guys. Well, in our generation, we're taught that you're not supposed to talk about it, and it's kind of one of those deals where we just talk around the campfire or whatever. But ultimately, the same way the Navy told the story, right? I just happened to be alive and can go and backfill it. But it's important for people who have that perspective, like you do, who actually go out there and in bed with them and get that feeling to get out and tell these guys stories, because ultimately we're retired now. We're the Vietnam generation, so it's okay for these guys to open up, because they're civilians now and tell their stories. And that, man, there's a line from Matt's movie, and he's like, man, I hate guys like that, or something. What was he talking about? Gene Vanderham. He's like, man, guys like that are the reason I joined the military. And you never really think about it, because when we ran, we're like, man, stop acting like that. But what you do,
and he helps us connect to everybody else.
It's a catalyst for that. So, man, hats off to you. And I don't mean to go down that rabbit hole.
No, I
but
love that you said.
when he was
it.
talking about
Yeah.
documentaries as opposed to,
Mm-hmm.
I think, man, what that part, because you see that docu on there, man, you're like, oop, stop. Right?
Awesome. Greg, thank you so much, and keep up the
Thank
great
you.
work. Yeah. God bless you.
You too. Take care, man.
Take care.
See you guys.
Dude, that guy, for a filmmaker, brothers, he's seen some stuff.
Oh, because he's so much more than a filmmaker.
That you're
It's kind of
100%.
like one of them deals, he's just dragging a camera with him.
It's
Right?
true. It's true. Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
because those kind of directors, we were talking about that, about the documentary, you know, when you're thumbing through it, there's something real about it. You can even tell by the screen that you're not looking at a movie. You're looking at something that's real.
That's it. And for me, it's like, man, you know, whenever I'm going through a tough time in my life, I gravitate towards documentaries. And you know, I think that's because it connects you to the true aspect of the human condition.
Silent option. I mean,
If
you're interested. Yeah, man,
the jungle I had, dude.
man. See the weapon deployed at the hip? That's not how it works. This weapon can deploy accurately from the shoulder. You know, firing rounds into thousands, and the barrel becomes red hot.
Remember that 60 with the duck bill,
Yeah, man,
dude?
it's like the weapon just keeps firing, the enemy just keeps dying.
Oh my God, dude, that was so epic.
And back then, remember you had to be at the TV to watch the show.
Oh yeah.
And you didn't know when it was coming on. I mean, no one had to look at a TV
That
guy.
made it so much more special. You didn't just get to
Right?
start it
Right?
over.
Like, where you
had to
going?
be in attendance when
Yeah.
it started.
Where are you going? Silent options on TV,
Yeah.
not
But you
Super Bowl.
You flip the channel and it's on. It's like Christmas. Oh my God!
Exactly.
I've been waiting a year and a half for this.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
That's what
That's what life used to be like
remember the old
in the last millennium.
Wait, yeah, 'cause that's
Well,
exactly.
Sunday nights. Remember when Jacques Cousteau's show would come on, and
But Christmas is so
what
great,
was
man,
the
'cause
one in
it's a weight on
Africa?
it, and it's like a build up.
Exactly.
What was the one in Africa where the dude would go and you'd see, and they'd have the footage of the lions and the.
Oh man,
you
was that
remember
like a National Geographic
Yeah, it was
thing?
something, and it
or,
had
or
the dude-
Nova.
Dude, Shark Week.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, guys, you don't watch Shark Week?
heck yeah, you watch Shark.
Did you ever watch
I'm like-
Wild America with Marty Stolfer?
Of course.
Marty Stolfer, and this is Wild America.
I don't know if I ever saw that.
I never forget one time he was being
Well-
chased by these pigs. They were charging him. He was jumping up in these trees.
Pigs.
He was a badass. The 70s, man. This is decades before the Crocodile Hunter ever came
Yeah,
online.
Irwin, man, I was glued to him.
He was pretty awesome. But
was
this
good
guy, let's go back to Greg Barker.
Where are we?
Yeah,
where the hell did we go?
we digress
Wild
a bit.
America.
We digress. We're back. All right, we're back.
Jesus,
So,
what just happened?
the crazy thing about this cat is like he goes from Rwanda to Syria to Bin Laden to he's
Yeah, and those
picking
are-
some
that-
heavy.
Those are heavy, and because of what I was able to do working and with Pete and all those guys, man, those guys who had to deal with the real life stuff, they take part of that with them.
You can't not, right?
And I saw how Mark and Pete and Taylor and all of them, how much that affected them, having to dive into that and what they take away from that. And man, it wasn't real time. You know what I'm talking about?
You mean there was almost
That
a
wasn't in the real
suspension?
world, is what you're saying. That's not a
he's out there in
documentary.
real time, so I can only imagine how much he's sucking in.
Oh my God! Imagine
Well, he said 7 years making the
Rwanda.
Rwanda.
That's
almost
intense.
a decade, man. That's
And that was genocide too. So that's the true root of evil. I appreciated what he says about the gray area and the fact that we all can at times have a moral ambiguity that allows opportunities to stray one way or the other. Most of the time, I think it's towards the good, but in certain aspects of our background, it's been towards the other side. I would suggest. But it in that true essence of evil, and what you hear and seeing those children that had the machete marks across their heads or that can rip you apart. And the fact that he kept at it for 7 years.
Well, it lets you know truly how far we've come as a country, because take a step back, everybody's like, all humans are created equal. We're all equal in every way, right? I mean, we preach
in America,
we preach that nonstop, right? But so if every human's alike, know that you have the capability of killing an entire civilization off. I mean, because of what reason? Over here, that people couldn't even fathom that. Couldn't even fathom. Genocide's a word to most people, man. Unless you got to get over there. Yeah, you have to leave this country. You got to go outside of the United States. Just watching it, the documentary will suck you in. If you're affected by that, imagine, the real life when you can smell it.
You ever talk to a Holocaust survivor? Oh my, I remember growing up in South Florida, we had the highest concentration of Holocaust survivors in my area out of anywhere in the United States. So literally every year in grade school, middle school, and in high school, we would have an opportunity to have a Holocaust survivor come in and speak. And I can remember the first time it really registering, I was in 5th grade. And this woman came in, starts talking, and talks about World War II, and then begins, and she shows us her tattoo. Mm-hmm. And begins to try and express the devaluation that the Nazis inflicted on them in terms of their self-worth, their existence. And I just remember, I couldn't fathom the totality of the evil, but I remember being affected by what she was saying. And it really just stuck with me. So, like, you're to that point, and this goes back to the point that you finished with him, Marcus, the fact that America is so intimately involved in all of those efforts to try and either stop genocide or to stop evil and it's the prolific nature of evil and how it can spread. That's important stuff to recognize in our culture and civilization.
The way I look at it, there's still things that happen out in the real world that words can't describe or put weight on.
No, they have to be experienced.
You know what I'm talking about? Did I say that right?
You totally did.
I mean, to try to describe it in words is an insult, right? Or doesn't even fit. And that's kind of with the Holocaust, man, for somebody to snatch your ass up and torture you and just
burn you to death.
Yeah, when you're not even human, and to watch it going down, not knowing when your time is. I remember, man, dude, when somebody's got you and they're working you over and taking turns, when the end is. It's it's a feeling.
Well, I think. Go ahead. I know you've got something you want to add.
And I wanted to say this to him before he hung up, because we'd said, you're doing really important work, but I don't know if I wanted to say more about why I think that is, because, you're talking about words not conveying, or you're not going to get an understanding about certain scenarios, situations, just through words, right? You're not going to be able to read about it. You got to be there. Now, you can't go through, you cannot experience all these things, but he creates a bridge. What he does is he creates a bridge between.
That's a way to say that.
I find this to be so relevant, particularly with the military in the United States, because the population, I feel, in our current conflicts has become so distant from the reality on the ground over there. You take it. I was reading an article about this recently. Back in World War II, the percentage of the American population that was affected by the war, right?
Oh yeah.
Percentage. It was huge. It was almost everyone. But today, the percentage of the American population that's affected, that knows someone who's in the military, actively deployed or something like that, it's a very, very tiny number. And the danger in losing that understanding of the implication of our foreign policy to go fight, and invest our military, invest our blood and treasure in a war, it's extremely dangerous if the majority of the population doesn't understand what that impact really is. They don't see their brother come back, they don't see their sister come back, or know that they have to go over there and they're potentially never coming home. It just becomes a rah, let's go fight another war, because they don't understand. It's a game to them.
You can grow up here and not even be, you can literally grow up here and not even have it not affect you at all.
There are kids. Exactly. There are kids in grade school, middle school, high school, college right now who don't know why we're in Afghanistan, who don't know why we're fighting ISIS.
Hey, and remember we used to, I've said this. I'm like, well, we do the things that we do so you don't have to know about it. But what's happened is, it's gone.
It's gone too far.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's gotten to a point to where now it's not even on your radar. That's not good. And not for the mere fact that I worry about you worrying about me. You need to worry about yourself. Because once I'm gone, you're going to have to stick up for yourself.
Well, there comes a time where the torch has to be passed.
Yeah,
right?
That's
Where
what I'm saying.
like you're saying, there's a percentage of the population that hopefully, based on whether it's our show and how we deliver access to great never quit military stories or a sense of higher purpose, or it's Greg Barker's films that they watch and they feel this connection to, this bridge, as you describe it, and pulls them in.
To build some kind of understanding.
Hey, there'll always be an American warrior class. I mean, you ain't going to breed that out. I mean,
it's getting pretty small, brother.
It's always been small, right? And here's what happens. You think about it like this, though. Ultimately, a lot of the guys on the video games, the guys who don't have anything to do with the war, what do they like to do? They like to play it, and they like to, pretend. There's going to be one day when the pretending
ends.
It's not. Pretending. You're going to have to get it. It's going to get real.
Forced, right? Yeah. Right. And a little perspective. Just last night, I've been ingrained in Ken Burns' documentary, The War, right? And I'm in the Battle of Bulge period, right? And 1 million servicemen were in the Battle of the Bulge. 1 million participated in that particular aspect of the battle. 80,000. Pretty sure it was 80,000 casualties in that battle, right? In 45. We have had a little over 2 million total serve in the 2 longest wars in U.S. history. Perspective.
Right?
The numbers are incredible. And I mean, I think it's a great thing that we don't have as many casualties in war now.
Yes.
Warfare has evolved, and it'll continue to move in that trend. But my point is that the population losing an understanding of why we're doing these things makes the population more easily manipulated. There's not a national consciousness there has to be a consciousness of what this act implies.
The meaning.
So, bringing this all back around, I think someone like Greg going to, telling these stories and creating an emotional connection with the authority of a documentary format, right?
Yep.
Really, I think it's important work. I think it's very important work.
Amen. Yeah. All right. Greg Barker, please go check out his stuff. It's very powerful information. It's gonna give you perception on all these different topics. He's his Legion of Brothers is out now. Go ahead and download it. It's going to be on CNN again in September. The guy is really at the top of his game in terms of documentary films, and he cares about the human condition. So
They're good.
They're good.
Yeah, they're good.
They're simply put, they're awesome.
They're genuinely entertaining.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
You're going to enjoy learning something.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Listeners, listen. We are so deeply indebted to you, and that's why we're doing this. That's why we do this show. That's why the Wizard and Marcus and I are so passionate about bringing you information that's going to enable you to pursue your greater purpose in life. That's going to enable you to actively engage in enhancing your own human condition by learning the never quit mindset. And you can learn that in all different facets. You can learn it through documentaries. You can learn it through research. But more importantly, as Greg said, you've got to get out there and experience life, because that's where you truly learn what it means to never quit, to get invested in the world that's around you and even go beyond, to travel over the horizons of doubt and into the places that the unknown will spark a greater reason for living for you. So we hope you heard that. We thank you again. If you want to dedicate yourself and write in one of your great never quit stories, we'll take a look, and if it's really good, we'll read it. If it's amazing, Marcus, what's going to happen?
We're going to bring them on, look at them right in the eye.
We're going to bring you on the show. We're going to let you tell your story. I just want to say I'm so honored and privileged to be back. Guys, I really,
It's great having you back, buddy.
I really, really missed you.
Is it?
I really.
I just said it to make him feel good.
Come on, dude.
Yeah, I knew that was kind of BS from you,
Talk
but
shit as soon as we leave the room. Come on, man.
Talk about you when you're not here.
so it's awesome to be back. My vacation, quote, quote, was amazing in terms of what I learned about myself. I needed it, but I feel so privileged, so honored to be blessed to be back with you guys and following my true calling, my passion in life, which is to try and deliver motivational media that matters to people around the world. So I'm thankful to you guys for being patient for me. I'm thankful for the God for showing me the way back here. And I'm thankful for the listeners, and thank you for Mr. Barker for coming on.
Absolutely.
Marcus?
Thanks, man. Thanks to you, brother. And thanks for everybody for listening to us and letting us come back here, man. And I know we can go down some of those crazy rabbit holes, but it's entertaining ourselves, I guess.
That love.
Yeah, right.
And we hope you get something out of it.
Yeah, right. There should be a point behind any of those little diatribes we
there is.
go down, right?
There it is.
But thank y'all for doing that and keep coming back and letting us do this, man. I can't even put into words what that means. So I'm out.
I'm out.
Never quit. Team Never Quit. Team Never Quit Radio.